Latest figures released by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, indicate that there are 244 million children and youths between the ages of 6 and 18 worldwide who are out of school. Out of this figure, Nigeria, UNESCO says, accounts for about 20 million out-of-school children. This is just over 8% of the total figure, meaning that out of every 100 out-of-school children globally, almost 10 are in Nigeria. Issues around the strike action by ASUU have been well documented, and it's also known that there is no public school registration for the WAEC examination in Sokoto and Zamfara states, while some candidates in some southeast states cannot participate in the UMTE examinations due to the sit-at-home order of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. It is generally accepted that no nation can grow without a sound education system. And how likely is it that Nigeria and other countries will attain Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is quality education for all by 2030? These and more questions will be answered shortly, as my guests will be on hand to speak to issues concerning out-of-school children. Welcome to Nigeria Today. I am Lydia Odije Ochi. To discuss out-of-school children, I am being joined by Dr. Adeniyi John. He is a fellow of the International Curriculum and Assessment Network, UK. He is also the founder and executive director of the Global Scholarship Trust. Dr. Adeniyi John also stands as the Deputy National Coordinator, West African Civil Society Forum. Glad to have you join us on Nigeria Today.
Thank you.
Also with me in the studio is Omang Dave. He is the team leader, or the team lead of Educational Radio, and a member of the Presidential Technical Working Group on Alternate School Program. Mr. Omang Dave also serves as communication lead of the West African Civil Society Forum and is a member of the Callistus Juma Executive Dialogue on Science, Technology and Innovation. That's a mouthful. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
My pleasure being here.
Okay, let me begin with Dr. John. UNESCO's figure, they show that Nigeria accounts for over 8%. That's a lot of out-of-school children globally. That's about 20 million. Why do we have such a high figure?
Well, thank you once again. To begin with, you can say that the issue of leadership, because everything starts with leadership and ends with leadership. So, having said that, let's look at the education sector as a whole. What are the things responsible for these out-of-school children? For me, it's what I can call educational barriers. There are a lot of educational barriers, Of course, but religious, we can see in some parts of the country, religious is a barrier, and if that is not tackled, it can make children to be out of school because there are some religious sentiments towards that. Then, of course, there are some other issues when it comes to infrastructures, in our schools, in our various schools in Nigeria. So there are so many things responsible, for children to be out of school. Again, we can talk about, the issue of availability of infrastructures in our school when things are not well provided, for the students to have access to quality and affordable education. For example, students are supposed to go to school to have a complete experience while they are in school. But when the environment is not conducive for them to learn, it's discourage them from going to school. So we must at all time put necessary infrastructures in school to woo students for learning. So there are a lot of things responsible for these out of school children.
Okay, the figures show that the country has not seen improvement in the number of out of school children in the past 5 years. There's no improvement. Now, what are the factors responsible for this, and what can government and key stakeholders do to change the narrative?
Well, thank you very much for having me this evening. Let me start with what my colleague just mentioned, the issue of poor infrastructure. It has been a recurrent decimal from administration to one administration to the other. And each we keep hearing, we are going to improve on this, we're going to improve on that. And what we see, can we go back to the budget? The question is, how much is allocated to the educational sector? Before now, at the level of the UN, UNESCO had agreed, or the world over had agreed, that for third world countries, there should be well over 26% set aside for that. But the question here is, how much are we allocating for that? It's way less than 15%. The first time we ever came close to this was in the third National Development Plan of 1981 to 1985, which was 17.03. That was the highest. Then the second National Development Plan of 1970 to 1974 was about 13.5%. Now in 2018, we have less than 7.5%. In 2019, it dropped again to about 6.7. Then it went on again. In 2021, only God knows it's less than about 7.5. It tells you why the infrastructure is where it is. And when education, because those people at the level of UNESCO and UN, for them to have agreed that, okay, let this amount of money or whatever be allocated to education, they know the needs, the importance, knowing, just like Mandela said, that education is the only weapon that we can use to heal the world, we can use to treat the world. Men. But if this is not allocated, the issue of infrastructure, the issue of welfare of lecturers, the issue of what should be allocated to education will suffer a great deal. And no wonder other multiplier issues like insecurity has taken over. Because when the children that are supposed to be in school are not in school, what is the consequence? They fall out. Now, because they fall out, now they become urchin, they become weapons, they become gunpowder in the hands of all of these. Kidnapping has been a serious issue. Most children cannot go to school because there's threats. Man, it is said that you either stay back at home and pay the armed robbers that will come 10,000 or 100,000, or go to the road and pay 10 million or 5 million. So sort yourself. There were so many incidences, as it were, in most federal universities or federal schools around that were asked to leave the school. Now, what happens to the children? Now, the other issue of religion, like you said, religion has been a serious barrier. Now, in part of the north, you know, the girl child is being looked upon, okay, education, okay. Now, as it were in the north, same it is to the east. In the east, the Igbo, the Iwa boy, instead of going to school, why not go learn an apprentice and become an apprentice, and be that as it may. Now, what is the federal government going to do? Are we focused? Can we compare what we have, being the largest black nation in the world? Can we take a look at Nigeria and look at our population and see that we have something that is very key that the world needs, the population?
Yes.
It's a tool. Can we take that up? And can we begin to say, okay, today we had voted this. What are we going to do tomorrow to better tomorrow? But until we start that and committed to that, mind you, every other thing is on top of education. Because if you give, there's one thing that was pasted in one of the universities in South Africa. They said you could use the best ballistic missile, but you can't kill everybody. But with a poor quality education, you know, doctors are there. What happens in the hospital? They kill. They will kill because no good education. The lawyers are there, economists, accountants. So with all of this poor, the system crumbled. I don't want to say maybe that's where we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that elaborate explanation. Now, he talked about children not being able, not afraid, or maybe not the environments because of the insecurity, kidnapping, funding, and all that.
Yeah.
Now, what can be done? What needs to be done to improve security in schools?
Yeah, a lot of things has to be done to be put in place in our schools. First, we need to start with health and safety policy. It starts from policy design. I was in several schools for international accreditation, and one of the things that was lacking is policy. Most schools in Nigeria don't have policies that they use to operate. In other climes, you must have policy before you even establish a school. So safety policy needs to be introduced in our schools, and parents and relevant stakeholders must demand for this safety policy. You can put cameras, you can put anything you like in a school, but without this policy, you might not be able to implement, the safety procedure. So that is number one. Then number two, for the school, the entire school, necessary safety measures must be put in place. For example, part of the international standard procedure is that there are some areas, within the school and outside the school that must be marked as hazardous areas. But unfortunately, where we are as a country, everybody is just doing whatever they like in the school. So safety is a very big issue. It's not about stopping what's it called, bandits or whatever to attack a school. That's not what we're talking about. There is internal safety and there is external safety. So we need to look at the internal safety. Then safety education needs to be introduced in our schools, in our curriculum, because if you don't know about safety, you cannot guide against safety. So from our primary curriculum to secondary curriculum and post-secondary curriculum, safety education must be introduced. Okay. Then, of course, with the current situation we are having in the country today, thank God that recently we heard that the federal government wanted to draft the men of Nigeria Civil Defense to schools to be guiding. It should not just be a lip service. Okay. It should be implemented. Okay. Yeah.
Now, let's now get the views of some Nigerians on this issue of out-of-school children. Take a look.
The reason why some children drop out from school is because some children, their parents didn't have money to send them to school. Then some children are, maybe they are into an education like this, they lost their parents, so they have to drop out from school because of they don't have money, or some parents are late.
The high rate of poverty increasing, and those who are rich does not help the poor in this our generation.
They should come up with educational programs for those that are out of school so they can benefit from it.
You talk about lack of resources to put these children in school. We have the resources, so the lack of resources is not an excuse at all. I think it's just lack of political will and the commitment to make sure that these children are out of the street and in school. Generally, if you ask me personally, I think one of the reasons is religious sentiment or religious view, and the lack of commitment from the elites from the northern states to make sure that these children are in school. And I think, to me, if you ask me, basically it's just about their religious view about school.
You're welcome back. This is Nigeria Today, for those just joining us, and our focus is on out-of-school children. I have still have with me Dr. Adeni John and Omang Dave, both from the West African Civil Society Forum. Now, you heard what Nigerians had to say. How would you respond? I particularly picked the second respondent who said, the rich do not help the poor. How would you respond to that?
Well, the rich do not help the poor. Let me take it from the point of view of some of our schools. Now, There's something we were trying to do at the level of the West African Civil Society Forum, WACSOF. We are trying to see, because if we depend solely on government, as we had always seen, it's not going to help matter. We're trying to come to close the vacuum like an interventionist civil society group, where we take stock of what happens to some schools, get to the schools. Of course, some sit on the floor, some no roof on their heads, some sit still learning under the tree. Then we will come back, because we find out too that there are some organizations that are built, or factories, industries, or better put, bigger companies that are domiciled around those areas. Then we can now go to approach them to see how they can support, either in the area of infrastructure, building or rebuilding, ICT, football, like playgroup stuff or something, library, books, ICT, and all of those things, as a support. But two, depending on government, I don't know, I don't want to say it hasn't really worked, to a reasonable extent. So much money goes in there. Mind you, the international donors brings in money too, those in money too. But despite the very slim budget that we have, we still suffer the same way. One of them said something. He said poverty. It's a serious barrier. As it is done in America, he said, my colleague said something about curriculum. This curriculum is long overdue as far as I'm concerned, Nigerian curriculum. Now, when you graduate from here, we went to a program, Said, where you go through the NYC. On your passing out, you're asked to learn a skill. Why? Orientation. The Nigerian orientation doesn't permit you to even work, to do skill. It permits you to look for white-collar job. It's a white-collar job saturated environment. I am graduating. I had set my mindset. I took up accountancy or economics to work in the bank or CBN, knowing how much they pay. And I'm going to the university. You ask me to go and do a skill. Hey, hold your skill. I don't need it. Now, how are we going to impact? When we start this thing in the curriculum, now a child has started from small. He has seen the need for whatever he wants to go, his interest. By the time he gets on the transient point where he's about going out, and you now introduce this stuff to him or her, what does the child do? He is going to embrace it with all hands. To say, okay, I am happy to be here. So the curriculum is important, that we begin to insert this skill acquisition, entrepreneurship, to build entrepreneurs that will build Nigeria.
Yes. Now, I want to ask you, Dr. John, do you think it's time for the federal government to declare a state of emergency on the educational system?
Yes, it is time.
Okay.
And now is the time. And it cut across every areas. Certain scholarship programs need to be introduced. For now, we thank TED Fund and PTDF what they are doing in the area of scholarship. For this year, 2022-2023, about 8,000 Nigerians were shortlisted to go and study abroad. PTDF is already doing that. TED Fund for last year, I think, about 2 or 3, 4 years back, they've spent over 1.something billion, on scholarship. But we need to do more. Okay. The issue of education should not be for the government alone, and that is how it works in other climes. And that is where private individuals, religious body must come out, and the government must provide enabling environments, for all stakeholders to come together. Okay. And the issue of scholarship is very important. We have so many scholarship boards. We have federal scholarship board here and there, but this scholarship, how we are administering it to the beneficiaries.
What kinds of scholarships?
Scholarship, bilateral, for federal government it's mostly bilateral relationship between one country to another. But what are the steps? Who and who are getting this scholarship? You understand? So government need to look at, what needs to be done. Then the TED Fund needs to rejig her system, the way they implement or they fund infrastructures and trainings in higher institutions. We need to go back to the rural areas and ensure that necessary funding has to be provided. And the issue of open education needs to be introduced. open education, we are still very rigid when it comes to online education in Nigeria. And our counterparts all over the world are accepting it. Now we have almighty, to say, almighty open heavens, open university. Okay. Then why are you not allowing other private institutions to also create open university? So that at that level, we have different types of accreditation. And again, our system, there is a lot of purification of certificate institutions here and there. Because when we talk about standard of education, we are not talking about university, primary. What about professional institutions? Who accredit their curriculum? Who monitors their curriculum? Somebody will just wake up, I am this, I am that. Who is in charge? Different level of trainings from different. That is why a state of emergency has to be declared. It's not just to look at the university. A lot of things that are happening in our system today in the university is not something that is just happening. Okay. It started from the foundation. And of course, according to scriptures, if addition is destroyed, what can the righteous do?
Okay, let me ask you, Dave. How optimistic are you of achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is quality education for all by 2030?
Thank you for asking me the question.
Why did you laugh?
No, I laugh because we've had series. We have the Millennium Development Goal. Unfortunately enough, I participated in the British Council World Bank capacity building on that project. And we discussed a lot. And just like in the case of some policy somersault we've had in Nigeria, beautiful policies on paper, after the thing doesn't even go to the laptop, it goes to the shelf. And the roaches and the snakes or whatever come to take it away, just the way they take our funds away in Nigeria. It is a very laudable project, because if you take a look at what is happening in other clients, in other part of the world, like South Africa, like Ghana, don't forget, Nigeria has well over, as of 2018, over 30,000 Nigerian students in Ghana. Okay. And, 30,000 Nigerian students in South Africa. Okay. And about 70,000 Nigerian students in Ghana. Why? Have you asked yourself that?
Please tell us.
The educational system is way a bit above ours. Take a look at it again. As of 2017, the budget of Ghanaian education as at then was about 18.1 in 2017. As of 2018, it went down to about 17. We have not attained 17. We are still struggling with 13 and 7 and 6. Now, you see, I had this confrontation with the Director of Press, Federal Minister of Education, the President, Mr. Bemgong, and he said, how can I be comparing a population that is a little bit lower with Nigeria with the large population? Don't forget, now in the federal universities, we have well over 43 federal universities in Nigeria, with well over 48 state universities, and well over 79 federal universities. Bring the total number to about private universities, 79. Bring it to about 170 universities we have in Nigeria. It's enough. It's enough. All we need is to be able to fund the university. My colleague said something about scholarship. Now, who gets this scholarship?
What's the criteria?
What are the criteria? Okay. Now, the child that is in Kauram Namoda, or that is in one village in a riverine area, and you said, don't forget, I said I came from Edu Radio. I called the director who is in charge of federal scholarship, and I said, I want you on my program to talk about this thing, to be able to enlighten Nigerians on access, or possibly let this thing go to the respective schools where you place them in their schools. But it's unfortunate. She turned down and didn't allow that. She should go online.
Your closing remarks as well.
Okay, my closing remark, is that federal government should be serious about education. They should not play lip service to all of these things, and they should try and release adequate funding for our university, and ensure that ASU go back to class.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to really appreciate you, Dr. Adeni John and Omang Day, for sharing your thoughts and perspectives with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
And to you, our viewer, thank you, as always, for your company. There will be another episode tomorrow. And do remember, you can also watch this episode and other ones on www.youtube.com/NTNU24Hub. I'm Lydia Ojiochi. Bye for now.